And then her aunt comes up to her and is like, there's only 2 reasons you would have seen him. Either you are part of why he died, or he is your true love, which could be the same thing.
Because remember,
if she kisses her true love, he gonna
get a herpes
die.
blister in it. That's how herpes blisters work, right?
No.
Anyway, I was homeschooled. We didn't have sex ed.
Oh my god! I know your mother. Do not slander her. Hi guys, and welcome to a very special episode of your favorite podcast. It's me, Maria, and with me in the flesh. I shouldn't say with me in the flesh, but I am with in the flesh.
This is my house.
William.
As you can see, I do tabletop miniatures. What's funny is we were just talking before this started about how men who wear the second button undone looks slutty, and I realized I was showing how that looks, and I realized it's still there.
Yeah.
So I want you guys to know that's not normally how I.
Valerie said, "Save it for the OnlyFans." Will.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we read books without protection on that. All right, and Maria, what book are we doing today?
We're reading Raven's Boys by Maggie Stiefvater.
We remember the name. This is our second book of hers we're doing. We had originally read Scorpio Races, which is basically a perfect book. Like, it's exactly what it wants to be, and that really helps. And this book I felt like was good, but not the perfect book Scorpio Races was. How did you feel about it? Because we actually haven't talked about it, besides you saying you didn't want her to end up with Gansey, which I agree with.
I just liked her and Adam. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people were like, I'm not here for the romance. But I just thought he was so sweet, and she was sweet, and it was just, little babies. Anyway, I enjoyed it. It's actually been one of the more enjoyable books we've read recently.
Yeah, it really has.
And I'm like, I want to read the second one. And one of the things I enjoy is that we've read so many books lately that have climaxes where a bajillion climaxes.
Yeah.
This had a climax and then it ended. I was like, oh, here's the denouement. And then it's done.
There's 2 chapters of denouement. Yeah, it's really short.
It just ends, and I like, because I was like, oh, there's a second book. I get to read that at a point at which I am ready to read that.
So one thing I'll say about this, and I think it's my biggest criticism with the book, is that this feels like the first part of a series, not like a book. In that I felt like the stakes never really heightened enough. I felt like there was never quite enough at the end going on. It felt very oh, okay, this is the first half.
And you know what the problem is? Why that happened? Because she included the vision scenes in the tree.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because those were the stakes. Gansey dying is the stake.
Yes.
And we don't ever see that. And so it's this thing looming, and that's way more. Because listen, if she had not included the visions in the tree, and that had started at the beginning of the next book, what would have happened is, number one, we would have known at this point, there would have been more tension between Adam and Blue.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, so there would have been tension there. Number two,
Dos. This is a Hispanic house.
Oh, sorry.
Number dos.
Dos.
Respect my culture.
But the second thing, are you going to put it on the mouse pad?
I can't read the chat, and I know our chatters are going to say something very smart.
I think Adam became a little unlikable. He absolutely did, and I hated it.
There was some character assassination going on there. That was just a little random.
It made me so angry. I read it 2 years ago. Oh,
yeah. My mouse pad is terrible.
I read it 2 years ago. Can't remember a single thing, which probably says enough.
You double tap it at all.
Yeah, all those premonitions set up stuff that didn't happen. And then Aaron comes in.
It was weird.
I liked him so much.
His decision at the end didn't feel like it really moved organically from all the stuff that had come before. It just felt kind of okay, I theoretically understand how that makes sense, but I didn't feel like the emotional movement up to it.
I have an argument how to make that work better. But back to my point.
Yes.
The stupid premonitions made it so that all of the stakes in this, which is finding out Noah's dead and dealing with Welk, and because that's one arc, that's one story. The death of Noah, Welk as a murderer, waking the ley line. That's all this book should have been. But no, we're sitting there like, oh my God, Blue and Gansey are going to fall in love. Oh my God, Adam does something and it causes Gansey to kiss
She
Blue,
doesn't
and
even
she
kiss
dies.
anyone. That would be oh shit, the game is on now. It's just okay, I'm going to still try not to kiss anyone. And I'm like, Really? Like, this is it?
It would have worked so much better if there'd been none of the damn premonitions, and at the end of this book, her and Adam kiss, and he doesn't die. And she hasn't told him, but she had told Gainsey.
Yeah.
And Gainsey and her look at each other, and fucking tension. That's how you do it. I mean, again, I was Team Adam until he went all weird at the end. But anyway, I enjoyed this book. It was a really easy read. It was really quick. Like, there was a point a couple of days ago, I think Thursday night? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Thursday night, where Katie, because she's been really busy, was like, hey, I'm not going to have time to read it. And I was only like on chapter 6. And I was like, in a normal world, I wouldn't finish, but I'm going to finish the shit out of this book. And I finished it like half an hour before arriving here.
It was so readable is the thing.
It was so readable.
The only reason the book works as well as it does is because the author, I'm not going to mangle her last name every time, guys. I'm not the German. And is because she is so talented as a writer. Mm-hmm. She can really make almost anything work. It's funny. I think it was... Valerie in the Discord was saying that sometimes she'll just tell you stuff in the prose and you're like, no, you can't just tell, but damn it, you're such a good writer. It worked. Why? She's so good with, and it's also, I compare it a lot to ACOTAR in my head because I'm still traumatized about that despite being about a month later.
Listen, this book was so much better than ACOTAR. I felt like vaguely cleansed, and I have gripes with this book, so that should tell you something.
But like, she can actually write banter in a way that feels authentic, and like different characters have different voices. Like Kala is the best, is like the funniest. I love Kala. She's so funny.
And Persephone has a very distinct, even though she's not in a lot of scenes, personality. Mm-hmm. Orla, who's in like 0 scenes, has a distinct personality. Despite, and it reminds me of the side characters in Scorpio Races, where they're just so developed. Mm-hmm. Like, and yet they're not on scene a lot, and you develop bonds with them, and you want to have like.
They reminded me of the Three Sisters with the Blind Sisters, even though those are in like 2 scenes. She's so good at that.
Yeah.
Even from the first scene with Ronan and Gansey and like the 4 of them, I was like, oh wow, they have a very specific dynamic that she has already let us into. That's not just like Rhysand and his boys being like, hey, wings. Am I right, guys?
I'm the quiet one. Look at my burn scars.
Witty semi-sexual pun that's not actually witty or a pun or funny. Like, she's so good at getting characters' voices that way that it's really it's what makes the book work, despite otherwise it being kind of slow and pointless.
There was a complaint I saw in the Discord that I will agree with. The boys, especially initially, feel too much like we are heckin' special boys. We're the heckin' specialists. You know, like how normally it's the girl that feels like, and the weird thing is she is quirky and weird, and yet she feels normal by comparison, partially because she fully embraces and acknowledges that she does these things on purpose.
Yes.
And like she's actively striving, so she's not the sensible one, and yet the entire time you're like, well, Blue, I'm so sorry, you are the sensible one. And then the boys are just like, ooh, look at that. And the thing is, like, I started and I was like, I'm gonna love Ronan, and I hate it. And I do.
Blue.
Yeah.
You want him to like you, even though.
I love Ronan, and I hate it because it's just such. You see that the angry Irish one, you know, like, oh God, it's just such a. Whose dad was probably, I don't know, in the mafia. He died.
I still don't quite get what that whole thing was about. It felt like that the author told us, but I wasn't quite paying attention.
So basically, we don't know exactly, except that there was a secret, but his dad was heckin' murdered.
Ronan, but they don't tell us, right?
How he died. No.
Right? Okay. I thought it was.
We don't know. Oh, he was beaten to death with a tire iron.
Oh, okay.
But we don't know why yet. There was that whole... during the seance, not the seance, the reading, where
he knows why.
Yeah, Kala was like, there's a secret. There's the reason your dad died, and you know why. And I just love him and his little bird. Though I do want to talk about
Chainsaw.
I love Chainsaw.
So funny.
Listen, the easiest way to get to my heart, guys. The easiest way to get to my heart is to give a tough, burly man a tiny little baby creature that he has to take care of. I'm done. Take me, Daddy. I'm done. I'm done. I just love it. I now root for them. He became my favorite character almost immediately. I love it.
Well, he has such a distinct character is the thing. It's actually funny because I knew there was going to be some twist with Noah because Noah is like, it's like, why is he there? He really doesn't add a lot. And you're like, oh, okay, now I understand why.
You know what the funny thing was? Every time Noah came up in a scene, I was like, what the fuck is up with this ghost boy and his dead eyes? Because they kept being like, and he was in shadow and his eyes were like, and I was like, motherfucker dead? What? And then I was like, oh, I called it. But like not intentionally. I didn't actually think he was dead. I was just being funny in my head. But then I was right.
It's a much better setup and Chekhov's gun than the moon was a Yoki thing. Remember from Playbook? Aaron says, hence why Ronan gets his own spin-off series. You guys gotta
click it.
I'm having issues.
Click it. Wait, why don't you have my mouse?
It's over there and it needs to be found. Hence why Ronan gets his own spin-off series. You guys got to read the Dream Themes to find out.
Perfect. I want a Ronan spin-off series.
That would be pretty cool. And again, the fact that he names the bird Chainsaw is what makes it not feel dumb, is because that's such a him
and
name.
It still feels like he's still an asshole. Like he's feeding the bird and he's like, I don't give a shit about your sleep schedule. Chainsaw gotta eat. And like there was a point where like someone had made a joke and nobody else thought it was funny, but Rona was laughing, and I was just like, I fucking love this kid. Okay, before we're doing the thing.
Yes. We beforehand we were like, all right, we need to spend like 10 minutes like just figuring out what main points we're going to talk about. Your hair is kind of messy.
Thank you.
So we need to talk about like 10 minutes beforehand, lay out some of the main points we're going to talk about, and then where in the book we should talk about them so we don't just front load everything. And then she got here late.
Yeah.
Though to be fair, I also don't know quite what I'm going to say about the book at certain points. So it's going to be a bit more of a discovery than like normally I come in like, this is what I'm going to talk about. And this is what I'm going to talk about. And in this case,
I had some time in my drive to kind of
think about it.
Cause like I called you specifically because I was like, I'm not going to have time. I want you to know I called this motherfucker twice.
My phone has been having a problem where it rings, but it doesn't ring at the sound at the sound that the notifications come in for some reason. It's very weird.
Yeah, because I called him about 40 minutes before I got here to be like, let's talk about this book, motherfucker. Because I'm not going to have time when I get there.
I wanted it to be a Patreon exclusive because I care about our patrons.
You literally said we were supposed to talk about it before we started the stream. Anyway, the point is, because I could just go on about little things in this book and we'll talk about them as they come up. But I would like to highlight some of your very good comments. Angry Otter says, I was not a fan of the rich boys at first. And no, initially you're like, they feel like in a YA when the main character is like not like other girls. They felt like not like other boys.
You know what's funny? And I don't know why, but I keep going into these books thinking that Maggie Stiefvater is writing like CW light. Like there's going to be a bitchy boy and like they're going to be like a cool boy. And it's like, she's not like that for all of it.
She writes male characters Will doesn't hate. And
I was about to say that. I was like, most of this cast is male, and I'm okay with it.
And it's insane because you guys don't understand how much Will dislikes other guys. He just does. He has one male friend. It's his cousin Jake, who's never gonna watch this. But hey, Jake, how you doing? That's it. All of his friends.
I like your brother.
My brother is really chill.
I've talked to him once. That's how I like him.
But he is very chill. My brother is.
No, your brother's really cool, actually.
Anyway, continuing. So she writes, men Will does not hate to read.
Well, and the thing is, again,
rare.
With distinct like personalities. That's the thing I got, and they talk like real people, not like boy band.
Yeah, and like Adam has a distinct personality, and even Noah, where we got so little of him, ends up having, or like it's so good. Even goddamn Welk. You know?
Yeah.
Who is not super fleshed out, feels like the entire time, like initially I was like, wow, this guy feels like he just got stuck in his 20s. And then you figure out what happened and you're like, oh man, motherfucker is stuck in his early 20s. Like he has not been able to move past this. And it works. Anyway, we're doing the thing. I just want to highlight comments. Ice Swallow talking about Ronan and Chainsaw, and he's so good at caring for her. Yeah, he is. Valerie says, my favorite character is Gainsey's boat shoe.
Okay, story time. When me and Maria first met, she hated my shoes.
They were terrible.
They were just shoes.
No. They were terrible. This boy wore brown, black, and like some dark greens. That was it. Cargo shorts.
Those are good colors.
And just like 2 large shirts, t-shirts, not even V-necks, guys.
Anyway, she was like, no, you need to get, what is it, topsiders? But deck shoes, basically the kinds
of the Sperry's. I wanted him to get a pair of Sperry's because he needs. I know who he is. He's not gonna like. They can't need to lace. they can't be like they need to be functional to wear to a nicer place, but also casual because he's gonna have like 2 pairs of shoes at best, and that is it. And I was like, okay, we're going with a pair of Sperry's. Partially because my one mother loves Sperry's and had been wearing them in that same functionality most of her life.
So she gave me her mother's shoes.
No, we went shopping. I've gone on a lot of shopping trips with this man. It was more than 2.
No, it was only like 2. Remember, you've been a busy bitch since I've known you.
No, but it was when I was still in.
Yeah, we went one time, and you showed me like more or less what clothes I should wear. And then I think we went like one more time.
Then we went, maybe. But anyway, when we went shopping, we went to a lot of places. It was jeans, it was shoes. But anyway, and then we got him a pair of Sperry's.
Yeah, and then that's pretty much just what I wear now, funnily enough, because I am male and we change our style every 10 years.
And so he's stuck. I have a couple more years before I can elevate him to
the next level.
Yeah, I've thought about it. I've literally planned what next stage William is going to be.
Too much work, guys.
Anyway,
but
yes, Gainsey's boat shoes.
Very funny.
Icewell says it's funny because the first thing Noah says is I've been dead for 7 years, and it's hysterical because I went back and it is the first thing he says. Like and because when he was sitting there in that scene where he's like, I told you, I was like, did he? Angry Otter says, oh, Noah literally says he's dead from the beginning. I believed him immediately. I was like, ha ha ha, what jokes. I wanted more ghost happenings. I'm actually okay with the level of ghost happenings, I think.
Yeah, it was interesting because in a lot of ways, Scorpio Races actually feels more creepy and magical than this book, even though that has like less.
The horses are that horse by the barn scene.
Yeah, or even one at night.
With the cat.
Oh, I remember the cat too. That's funny. Yeah, and then this one, there's actual supernatural stuff happening, but it does feel less atmospheric. What's interesting is I thought like, okay, she wrote this series and then she went and wrote Scorpio Races.
Scorpio Races.
No, she wrote Scorpio Races the year before this, which is just kind of goes to show that I think because Scorpio Races is a standalone, it was stronger for it. Sorry, guys, I gotta let my dog. He's really happy to see Maria because he doesn't really like me that much because he just doesn't really like men that much. But he likes, like, my sisters have never lived here, and yet every time they show up, he's really happy. The other thing is, whenever we're on the floor, he thinks it's dog time. Okay, I gotta show. Isn't he stupid looking?
He's so happy, boy.
He's so cute. Yeah, no pumpkin today, but we have Ajax.
Yeah.
But also, he just likes new people. When we had a air conditioner guy come, I eventually had to put him in one of the rooms because he wouldn't stop trying to hang out with the guy.
Oh.
He's the most social dog, and then he just lives with me and my mom. Which is really funny.
I've never seen no one.
But yeah, let's jump into the plot then.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, are there any just overarching, like, did you find any pacing issues? Like, I know you have
issues. No, mostly my problem was that, again, this feels like the first part of a series, not really a book. Scorpio Races, again, I think one of the reasons it feels better is because it's a standalone book. So every part leads up to the end, and you're like, okay, this is a complete story. Everything in it has a function. Whereas in this one, it was like, okay, we now need to wait a while before certain things come into play. Yeah. And like that, I think is like just less of a clean book. But yeah.
I think she could have saved it by not having the premonitions and by ending it with her and Adam kissing, because that would have been the hook for the next book. You know?
Hold on, my dog wants to get in here.
Oh. You were just there, baby boy.
He's so dumb.
So dumb. It's the same spot. He jumped off the bed. Yeah, he walked behind the computer. He came in front, and then he just jumped on the bed, and now he's in the same spot he was before that.
He's such a dumb animal. I love him so much.
Doggies are so cute. And that's a lot of my problems, is that unfortunately the premonitions, while in the moment were really cool, completely defanged the tension.
Mm-hmm. And then also the narrator, we'll talk about that in a minute.
am so glad I chose to mainly read physical copy of this book. My sister was listening to me listen to it at one point, and she just starts, she busts out laughing because I'd gotten, you know, you get to a point where you stop hearing the narrator and you're just hearing the story. And it was when Adam had sent the flowers to Blue, and I was like, oh, that's so cute, my little angel baby. And then, I summoned a dog. Did I make my talking to doggy's voice? But anyway, and I'm like having this like wholesome reaction, and my sister goes, she just starts laughing. And I went, what's funny? And she goes, that guy sounds terrible, and you're having a genuine reaction. It was.
Here's the thing. Apparently, he does a lot of Stephen King books. That is a perfect Stephen King voice. It's sort of I don't want to say white trash goblin because that's a Rachel epithet.
It's like Trailer Park Gothic
goblin because it's kind of like low and raspy, but also
like
yeah, and then blue.
Yeah, I guess so, but for me that's just embodies the Trailer Park. But the Gothic is like that, like dark.
I will say he's really good with actual character voices. Like usually it annoys me when male voice actors do female voices, but I so quickly just forgot. And the voice he does for Ronan is actually like really nasty and adds a lot.
His voice for Ronan is my favorite voice. Yeah. Everybody else was okay. I loved his voice for Ronan. Like if there was a different book where everyone was individually voiced, I'd want this guy to voice Ronan because he just sounded like such a nasty but smart ass little shit. Oh, I loved it. Angry Otter says, I hated his spooky voice in the prologue in the first chapter. Yes, I agree.
I actually liked his Calla and Persephone voices a lot.
Yeah, I loved his Persephone voice. That was actually, and Calla, actually.
Yeah, Calla is so funny.
Oh my god.
I love the part where she's like, that was very mean. I liked it. That's like, it's so great. I mean, that's the other thing about Maggie Stiefvater's prose and dialogue is that it's very slyly funny in prose form, especially because she'll be giving a description and then a character will think a thing and you're like, that was pretty funny, and it just keeps going.
She has a lot of really smart descriptions, or there was one, and I specifically was like, you need to remember this one, Maria, but it was like very straightforward, and yet it was like a twist. It was just so good. It's so good.
And it doesn't break the atmosphere too, which is kind of cool. It's still very gothic.
Yep.
So Maria,
yeah.
Do we have a Patreon?
Oh my god, guys. Do we have a Patreon?
How are people seeing this, and why are we reading their comments right now?
Live, like in real time.
It's a Saturday morning EST.
Like, serious shenanigans. Briefly making an appearance. Hey, everybody.
What's up?
Valerie said hi. And again, how did
we see
just
this?
say that? How did I know that despite it said judo shrew that this is serious shenanigans? It is because we have a Discord, which is one of our Patreon perks. Our Patreon is a lovely place where you can come and get extra things. Number one, like I said, the Discord. It's great. Have you ever thought, I want to talk about books with people, or I want to talk about writing with
smart people too.
With other smart people, but the people around me are not people I want to talk books with, or they're kind of dumb.
Or the book club I'm part of keeps picking a book that nobody then reads.
Yeah, exactly. If you've ever had that thought, come join our Patreon. It is nothing but readers, writers, and people talking smack about books or loving books or writing. Like it's a great place.
I get such FOMO when people from our book club, which is our second tier, you get to be part of a book club. That's what this is. It's a live stream. This is a book I picked, but usually we pick our patrons get to pick one at the end of the month through a poll and through nominating. And I get such FOMO because we pick it at the beginning of the month. Everybody reads and talks about it, and I read it in the last 2 days because that's the only time I have time, and I don't get to go in on the conversations.
Oh, look, we have a new.
Oh yeah.
Cocaine Bunny said just joined yesterday. We love you. Thank too. You. I don't know you, but in spirit, I do love you. Thank you for being here. And one of our oldest oldest patrons. Max, good morning,
I think of them as the inner circle because they actually comment, whereas a lot of the people don't really comment. So these are like the inner circle of the cult.
Max has been here forever, and he always comments on our videos.
We actually do have a third level of Patreon called the Parasocial Darlings, and what we do is me and Katie once a month we do a live stream where we go through and critique the a little short thing of writing. So far, we've been doing first chapters. We did one for The Savior's Sister and one for She Who Became the Sun. To just look at the prose, because here we talk a lot about the macro issues of a book, but there we talk about the micro prose level, like does this work, does that not work, would this be better? Katie talks about grammar and hanging participles a lot, which maybe is racist, I don't know. And then those are like the kind of things I really want you to get on there so we can do an uprooted episode, but Maria, a busy bitch.
I am a busy bitch.
And so you get to do part of that. Those streams are exclusive are exclusive to that tier, so you don't really see them here on the actual channel, but they're pretty good. I actually really want to do probably the first chapter or so from Scorpio races, because like the thing is I listen to these and I don't read them, so I don't pick up.
We should do the first chapter and the horse coming while they're in the stable scene in the paddock. It's so creepy and atmospheric.
Yes.
Right before, like when he goes to chase the cat.
When you said coming in the paddock, I was like, oh.
No, she's in the paddock with her horse, Dove.
And then the weird.
Do I remember that? Anyway, and then the black
predator horse shows up.
Yeah. That scene was insane. I would love to do that one. Yeah,
no, that would be pretty cool to do. Maybe if you guys bully her, Maria will actually join us for once. She has a new job, so maybe.
I do.
Because again, I'm listening to it and like I'm really curious about what Stiefvater is doing so that I can steal it for my own writing. And when we did She Who Became the Sun, that actually was really helpful because we looked at it and the author did a lot of things that were really good, but also you could start to see where the problems later in the book would start coming in. And so that's a good time. It's fun. I wish we could do it more than once a month, but it's very tiring. Okay, so
the book.
What is Raven Boys about? Is it a CW show?
It is not, even though it could be. Like
the cover looks really CW.
Yes, I also could see the CW trying to make a show out of this and doing a terrible job because it has like all the elements. I can hear
the indie soundtrack.
Yep. And the thing is, it has all the elements at the heart. 4 good-looking boys. You know, like you don't need one of which is rough and tumble. You know, like and then like an offbeat, quirky girl. But she's not really. Anyway, so this is the story of, I'm going to start with, I guess, the mainest of the
high
characters.
The high concept idea, which is Blue, a girl who lives with a bunch of fortune tellers, and she is told from the beginning that the boy she kisses will die.
Yes, if she kisses her true love.
Right. He will die.
She will kill him. Specifically, she will kill him, which is an odd way to phrase it. And
because HIV is curable at this point, so
it is.
You can live with it till your 60s. It's not curable per se. But go ahead.
The idea here is, number one, it introduces you, because this is one of the opening. I think this is the prologue, that psychic readings are in general very non-specific and yet true, and it brings an element of magic into this world, so you have an understanding about that. So Blue, she's a bit quirky. She shreds up shirts. She like uses cardboard to decorate things in her room to be environmentally sustainable. I think her father is Glendower.
Yeah, no, me too.
Yeah, I think Gainsey's been looking for Glendower, and he's gonna
bang his daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Really quickly, Celia says, I can't wait to see these teens portrayed by 30-year-olds in terms of a CW show. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Also, could we not have just made this early college? Why are we obsessed with telling high school stories?
Yeah, that was a little odd. I was like, really? They're that young?
They're so young. Why couldn't they have just been early high school? Why couldn't Alan be a college, or even like a starter? Because
they do feel younger than a lot of YA protagonists actually do, but it's still like more college than high school.
Yeah, you know, she is not a psychic. In her family, all of these psychic people, she hears nothing or she sees nothing. But what she is kind of like a battery, where if somebody is trying to figure something out and they can't, if she is in like present in the space, it heightens other people's psychic ability. So that's blue. On the other side of the map, we have
the Raven Boys.
The Raven Boys. There are 4 of them. Number 1, the point of view we see. There's 3 points of view. I lied. There's 4. Oh God.
There's actually a fair amount. It's interesting too because Scorpio Races was 2 POVs in first person.
Yeah.
And this one isn't. And it's funny because you can't really feel a difference between her first person and third person.
You really.
Where normally we complain
Honestly,
a lot about first person.
Right. I didn't even remember that Scorpio Races was first person. That's how good it was.
I think in that case, it actually may have made it a little like a touch more atmospheric that it's in first person, which is weird because usually first person makes writers read worse.
Oh man. That's crazy. That's how good she is. I forgot it was first person.
The Writers Bar Association that I've talked about, we are now going to let 2 authors write, Naomi Novik and Maggie Stiefvater, but she needs to change her name.
You keep forgetting Gideon the Ninth.
Oh, and Tamsin Muir.
Like my dude.
Diana Wynne Jones. She's allowed as well.
She's dead.
But in the Hall of Fame.
R.I.P. Okay. The main one of the Raven's boys is this guy named Gainsey. He doesn't go. Oh, I guess I have to set up a scene first. So Blue and her aunt Neve, who's coming to town. Her mom's name is Maura. Maura and her every St. Mark's Eve go to this abandoned, derelict, ancient little church, and ancient by American standards, guys.
So it's like 50 years old.
Like 200. Calm yourself. Like 150. Anyway, it's barely a church anymore. They go there and they watch for spirits, and Blue can't see any of the spirits, but what it is any spirits her mom sees on this night in this graveyard walking around are people who are going to die within the next year, and then she tells her clients in case any of them or their immediate family members were there. And so normally Maura goes with her, but this time her Aunt Neve, who is new and a fancy psychic lady from the big city.
I love the way she described Neve, because Neve is like a larger lady, but she always describes her as having such grace.
And beautiful
like,
hands.
Yeah, and like you get a very sense of her like, fayness almost.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the characters in this
again, even little characters, like you really get a sense for who they are, in a way that really pops on screen.
I like how Blue has a job for 2 chapters and doesn't for the rest of the series. Right? She only has a job when the plot wants her to be at the diner. And I'm gonna say the same thing about school. Like I was like, every once in a while she'd be like, and then they met up after school, and I was like, God, these kids are busy. I'd be exhausted. When are they doing their homework?
That is the most CW thing, which is that
is.
They're in school, but nothing actually happens in school.
And Adam has 3 jobs.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
How is
he never
Adam
even really
doing
thinks
any
about
of
them.
this?
It's interesting because in another book, and also Adam's situation with his family, that stuff would be like why the world doesn't feel grounded because they don't actually think about anything that happens in the world outside of the plot. But because she's so good at giving them little bits of character, it works. It doesn't feel unreal. Like I messaged Maria this, is that literally within like a page or 2 of
the first chapter,
I was like, oh, I'm on Blue's side. I like Blue.
Yeah, I like Blue. Me too.
She has like Blue. Even in just like little things, it gives her, Maggie gives her, Stiefvater gives her a lot of personality.
Yep. Anyway, so she's sitting on this wall with her aunt, and her aunt goes off trying to ask people, because she has to ask the spirits what their names are so that she can tell Maura. And while she's sitting there, Blue looks up, and Blue sees something. Again, Blue never sees shit. She's a normie for all intents and purposes, besides the fact that she also has a battery backup. And she sees me, and it's like the form of a boy. She can't really see his face, but his like shoulders are kind of slumped, and she goes up to him and she's like, hey, who are you? And eventually she gets close enough and she's like, who are you? And he says, Gainsey. And she says, is that all? And he goes, Gainsey, that's all there is. And it's this moment, and then her aunt comes up to her and is like, there's only 2 reasons you would have seen him, because she's like, I don't see shit. And she's like, either you are part of why he died, or he is your true love, which could be the same thing, you know?
Right, because remember,
if she kisses her true love, he gonna
get a herpes
die.
blister in it. That's how herpes blisters work, right?
No, that's not how it works.
So
anyway,
I was homeschooled. We didn't have sex ed.
Oh my God! I know your mother. Do not slander her. Oh my God!
Go ahead.
Jesus Christ! I'm sorry, William, Mama.
She's gonna watch this too.
I know. Goddamn.
But and so she's like, oh, this is interesting.
Gainsey. And then it switched.
Gainsey as a name, by the way.
I know. I knew you would. I was like, God, he's gonna end up liking this character, but he's gonna hate him so much in the beginning.
In general, I didn't dislike Gainsey, but I also didn't love him. Like, he's a well-sketched character, but like, I was never like, oh, this is a character I like.
I like Gainsey, but again, I wish I could have organically fallen for him and Blue instead of knowing that it was something I was gonna have to fall for. I don't like that. I don't like. I like the process. I don't like knowing the end destination beforehand.
It doesn't help that I also just didn't feel like they had chemistry.
They don't yet. There's not any.
Yeah, no, that's...
Her and Adam have so much chemistry. I'm so angry. Anyway, so it switches to his point of view, and basically what you find about Gainsey is he heckin' rich. He got 3 best friends. Noah, he's the smudgy boy. When you look at him, he's kind of smudgy. And people were like, it's like his edges on him aren't. And I was like, is he dirty? Like, is he wearing faded clothing? Like, what does that mean? The angry one, that's Ronan. Ronan is tall, buzz-cutted,
tattoos,
Irish, and heckin' angry. There was this one great thing where but it was something like that was the thing about Ronan. He was all sharp edges and he ended up cutting everyone.
Yeah, she's good at she's good at little descriptions that are like, okay, that describes a thing or a visual, but then also like is kind of witty or kind of plays into their character.
Yep. And then Adam, who is at the rich preppy boy school, but he's a scholarship student and he is a normie by rich preppy boy standards.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Have we explained what Raven Academy is?
So it's the Allenby Academy for successful boy. It's a pre-Ivy League.
Yes.
You know, like you're going there. And so Adam's whole motivation is he comes from a trailer park family. His father beats him. He wants to get out, and Allenby is his way out. But, you know, bunch of rich pricks. But he does make friends with this quartet of boys. Anyway, back to Gainsey. Gainsey is obsessed with this guy named Owen Glendower, who was this king in Wales, but then the English came at him and he ran off, and people are like, where is he? What happened to him? And oh boy, and you don't find out why, but Gainsey is obsessed with finding Glendower. He believes that Glendower's body had been spirited off of a ley line to America, apparently, because that's where the ley line spans the continents and the oceans. And if he finds the ley line and he accesses it, he'll find Glendower's body. And there's a myth that if you find Glendower's body and wake him up, he will give you a heckin' wish, a present. And Gainsey, less so for the present, like he doesn't care about getting something out of it, but he wants to find Glendower. Like, he is an insomniac, obsessive boy who, like, on one hand is like that one meme of that guy from Sunny
in Philadelphia.
That one?
Always Sunny in
Philadelphia. There's that one meme of the one guy with all the stuff on the wall, and he's like, he's that guy on the inside, but then on the outside, he's cool, calm, collected president with a cell phone.
Yeah, that's what Blue calls him at one
Blue
point. And it's like a great. This is one of the places where him being young just doesn't make sense, because like he has like connections around the world with other people looking for the ley lines, and like at one point there's a French character on the phone who's very funny who he talks to.
Welsh. It's not French.
Oh, I thought
Mallory,
it was a French accent.
No.
He's met him before, and I'm like, okay, they must have met when he was like 13, and he treats Gainsey like he's like a peer, and I'm like, he's barely been through puberty. Like, this doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, no, I didn't like that as well, because what it felt like was that, like, Gainsey does a lot of study abroads, like on summer, he just goes, and I would have liked it better if Mallory less talked to him as a peer than like a disciple, like
like a hang around,
a mentee,
yeah,
you know, and just gave him cryptic advice without taking him completely seriously, because he is just really young. Now, he does get away with a lot of it because his family is rich AF and he has complete access to the funds his family gave him, which is one of those things where that's not normally how that works. Normally you have to wait till you're like 18 for that to happen, but he just has access to all of it. There's a running thing throughout the book that Gainsey doesn't understand how money works, or like he's
the meme of like, How much could a banana cost? $10, Michael?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Nobody would eat it. Like,
he's a really good guy, but like he doesn't really understand money. And there's an element to which talked about in Ninth House in that book where the poor people were written like not so much like what poor people think about rich people, but what rich people are insecure thinking about poor people think about them. And there's an extent to which this book felt a little bit like that, especially at the beginning, where it's like the poor characters are always like, oh, the rich. And I'm like, calm down. Like, I'm poor. I don't feel that way about the rich.
Yeah, every time I see a Camaro, I'm not like, or a BMW, I'm not like, fuck you, asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
You like, and your preppy boys.
Oh, in your suit. But
and yet the high-pitched giggling of teenage girls wherever I am. Like if there's just a pack of teenage girls giggling, it just my hackles raise.
You're like, oh, I'm back in Nam. The smell of napalm in the morning.
Like, are they laughing at someone else or are they laughing at something innocent? You don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, and so like, and the thing is, the author is doing something with it here, so I get that, but it did feel a little bit. And I mean, again, I think Katie made this point in Ninth House. Like, this is a hyper privileged society they're dealing with. It's not just like normal people. What is it?
It's Valerie says, listen, I like Gainsey. Pastel polo shirt, dumbass who thinks he's an intellectual. You know that boy has a sock, Tim. This or OMG, the part where he offered Blue money to talk to Adam.
That was hilarious.
It is hysterical. Anyway, so Gainsey is trying to find the ley lines. The story kind of really kicks off. Stuff happens before this, but the story really begins to kick off at a diner. Blue happens to work at this restaurant. It's like a bar. It's a bar because it's late at night. She works at this bar as her part-time job. We are never going to hear about it ever again after this scene. Don't worry about it. But anyway, she again, her aunt is new in town. Just keep that in the back of your head. But anyway, she is there. She's working and she's a waitress. And this group of 4 boys come in. They sit not at her table, but at a different table. But then one of the boys, who she had noted in her head as the boy on his cell phone, who she called President's phone, comes up and is like, yo, my friend over there. And she can see which one it is because he's literally hiding behind his hand in mortification. She was like, with his ears are very pink and red because he's blushing. He's like, he thinks you're cute and he wants to talk to you. And there are 2 rules Blue has. Number 1, don't talk to boys. Number 2, all Allenby boys are bastards. And these are boys and Allenby boys. So just not a good setup.
Double trouble.
She's like, nope, I don't want anything to do with you. I, as you can see, am at work. And he's like, oh, that's not a problem. He's like, how much do you make an hour? I'll pay you. And what he's saying is, because it's Gainsey. What Gainsey's saying is, my friend really likes you. I'd like if you spoke to him. If you're gonna lose money, if it would make you lose money from being at work, don't worry about that. I'll cover it for you, because he doesn't understand how money works. And she's like, are you calling me a prostitute, motherfucker? And he was like, oh no, that is not what I meant. And there's a funny reoccurring thing about Gainsey talking about how he has to think about what he says before he says it, because he'll often say stuff and then it'll upset people and he just like can't help it.
His vocabulary is too large for them.
Yeah, and like he ends up sounding condescending but not meaning to. Like there's a really great part where him and Adam are having a fight and he was like, I'm sorry your father never taught you words more than 3 syllables.
And you're like, oops, that's a problem.
That's a problem. Anyway, she gets mad at him. She tells him off. He goes back. And then we switch to Gainsey's point of view. And Ronan, and he has this brother named Declan. Ronan's whole issue is that his papa was murdered. He found his body. And once his dad died, the Lynch boys, because his name is Ronan Lynch, became stupid wealthy. And Declan, the older brother, controls the money. And one of the father's terms of his will was that the boys had to go to Allenby and stay on the housing. And Ronan does not want to do that. He is angry. He's upset. He's got a lot of rage, a lot of emotion, a lot of like negativity in him. And he just wants to go and like fuck around because he has all this money. But his brother Declan was like, if you flunk out of school, I am cutting you off from the money. And so he has to go, even though he doesn't want to. And there is a thing, and I saw someone comment about this, about how sometimes it feels like Gainsey doesn't view Ronan as like a person. It's more like he's being like a child that needs to be taken care of. Which I don't, I'm okay with it if it's something that Gainsey has to learn from.
Yeah, if this is a character moment that he needs
to. If Gainsey has to shift and stop viewing people as things he has to take care of or solve problems for and collect, and letting Ronan be Ronan. But anyway, Ronan and his brother Declan are not on good terms. Ronan's brother Declan brings girls around to their place to just be like, look at my brother's good friends, and they're chasing magic stuff. You want to go have sex later?
Yeah,
which is exactly. And also, look, I thought that girlfriend was going to come up again because she got so much attention paid to her. Screen time. Like, she seemed dumb, but then when people weren't looking at her, she was really focused and analyzing, and like she knew shit, and they were like, oh, what if she knows about Glendower and the ley lines too? And then she never comes back again. Is she gonna come up in a second book? What the fuck?
Again, this doesn't feel quite complete in that way. It feels, I guess you could say it's like a red herring because Welk is the one who's actually after them, but it doesn't really feel that way. It feels like she just disappears after you'd think she would come back at the climax or something.
Or at some point, like Declan comes back at a couple points. You would think she'd be there with him. And so that when she comes back later, you're not like, oh yeah, that was the girl at the beginning of the first book. So Valerie said, I'm still waiting for her to show up again. Valerie, you're reading, like you're in the third book, yeah? Anyway, I just, why was she given so much?
Maggie Stiefvater is, the author is so good at making those little bit parts really stick out that I think with a less good author, you would be like, oh, okay, that was a one-off. But with her, the character popped so much. I was like, I'm interested. I want to see more. Who's she going to hook up with?
Like, what is happening? Like, obviously, it's not going to be Declan. Like, where is he going to have? Anyway, and Ronan and Declan, Ronan was supposed to be at, like, practice, but he ended up being there. Him and Declan kind of fought.
Ronan has school problems, and he can barely keep up a B, and like
except in
Latin, yes, where he's actually like good at it,
and he likes it. He studies.
So Gainsey is always trying to get him out of trouble and keep him in school, guys.
Yeah, and Declan, because like Declan is trying to do the same thing, but in a way that makes the two of them fight a lot. So they're. You got to keep them separated. But anyway, who so happens to be in the parking lot of Nino's, the bar that they were at, as they're all getting ready to leave? Fucking Declan and his girlfriend. So Ronan and Declan are going at it. They are having a full-on fist fight. Gainsey's like, oh God, please nobody call the police. I don't want to call the police tonight. And while this is all happening, he has left his notebook with all of his ley line information inside. And he ends up getting Ronan and Declan to kind of back off and like chill out. Ronan's really upset. He fucks off. And they end up going home. Old Blue comes out of Nino's later that night, and who should be in the parking lot with a bike but Adam? And she's like, that's not normal for an Allenby boy.
But he also has like a little thread missing here, and the bike isn't looking great.
And she realizes, that is a secondhand Allenby sweater. Like, oh, evidently this boy is not a rich dum-dum. And Adam's personality is caring. I would say a little. Somebody said, Aaron said, poor Adam, just a little soggy piece of cornbread. And he is of the characters the blandest, but I just liked the idea because sometimes people just are bland, and they're just like nice.
He means well.
Yeah, they're just nice, well-meaning guys who just like are trying to get an A in class. Like there's just those people in life, and I don't know. Sometimes the weird quirky girl with the obtusely normal one,
is cute.
And I like that, and I know that this romance isn't for everyone, and it's not like the world's greatest romance. You're not gonna like think about it at night or anything. But
I liked how much Blue liked him. Honestly,
I loved how much Blue liked him, and how she was just like, he's sweet, and
he didn't call,
and how his face is perpetually, almost always frowning, and so when he does smile, it's like this burst of like another, like he has to actively rearrange his face, and all of that was really cute. But anyway, Adam's like, hey, sorry about my friend. He means well, but can be dumb. And they're talking, and she ends up realizing, I could have a whole ass conversation with this guy. I need to leave. But she does give him an opportunity because her mom's like, no kissing boys. She gives him
There's this hilarious thing about her mother doesn't make rules or doesn't give orders or something like that. So later in the book, when she goes against the thing her mom says, her mom is like, I wish you hadn't done that. And she's like, but you didn't make it a rule.
Yeah. Yeah, and so she gives him her phone number written on a piece of paper, and he's like, I'll call. And she's like, maybe you will. But anyway, she goes home, and while she was at work, while the boys, so like as Gainsey had been walking into the Nino's, he was on the phone, and he had been on the phone with her mom because he gets off the phone, then the phone at work rings, and it's her mom being like, that Gainsey kid, the one who told you your name in the church, the spirit that told you his name in the church parking lot, he just called. He made an appointment for a reading. He's coming tomorrow night. And she's like, oh, shit. That is so, I'm going to see the guy that I either kill or fall in love with tomorrow. And then she has this moment with Adam. Remember that. So everybody splits up except Ronan's missing. They go to the house. Ronan's not where he should be. So then Adam, I think this is still this night. This is the night he gets chainsaw.
Yeah.
And so like they wake up in the middle of the night. Gainsey realizes Ronan's not there. And I think Noah tells him that. Also, I have to say something about Noah. He's smudgy and something. And like one of the first things he says is, I've been dead for 7 years, which you take to be sarcastic. Just remember that. I'm just
keep it in there.
Throwing that out there. So they Gainsey wakes up, realizes he's missing, calls Adam because Noah found Ronan once after he had attempted not good things. Trigger warning. And had to be rushed to the hospital. And so Noah says he's not in his room. Gainsey's like, we have to find him. He calls Adam. Adam has to sneak out to be able to go find Gainsey or to find Ronan. Gainsey ends up finding him at a church, passed out, drunk, just passed out. He wakes him up. They have a whole conversation, but he is holding to his chest a little tiny baby bird. And not like cute, fluffy baby bird, like naked winged.
Gross actual baby bird.
Baby bird. And it's a baby raven. And he's like, this is mine now. And Gainsey's like, what are you doing? Where did you get that? We're not bringing it back to the house. And he's like, it's mine now and take care of it. Her name Chainsaw.
And he talks like that in the audiobook because he's drunk. It's really funny.
Yeah. So then they end up taking him home. The next day at school, Adam's not there. And Gainsey gets a little nervous about it. And they wait to see, but he's not there. And he goes to Adam's house afterwards. And what you realize is Adam's dad beats him, which I mentioned earlier, but you find it out at this point. And when that happens, he doesn't go to school because, you don't want to go to school looking like that. But it is affecting his grades and his attendance at school. And Allenby is everything to him. And Adam is in a weird position where he wants to get out of his house desperately. And there's Gainsey, hands open, like, come on through, buddy. Because when you find out the place where Monmouth Manufacturing, which is an old factory that Gainsey's dad owns, is where Gainsey and Ronan and Noah live. Gainsey has continuously offered for Adam to move in with him and be like, come here, buddy, come get out of your house where a man beats you. This is a very nice place over here. And he's like, no, I can't go from being being my dad's to being yours and me taking you up on that, you paying for my living. I'm your guy.
I got to do it myself.
And also he does make the point that nobody is going to look at him and take him seriously.
Right.
If he's being, and I get that in this stage and to this level. I don't like how far he takes it mentally later.
So it kind of makes sense in that teenagers do tend to have weird fixations on certain things that don't super matter because they don't have a lot of context. But yeah, it felt more, I don't know, informed almost than natural to who he was. Yeah. It felt forced, honestly. Yeah, really especially later.
It really did. And I'm okay with it up to a certain point, before things get too bad, with him being like, I really would just like to be able to get out on my own. And for me, what it would have been nice is I don't want to live with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's a much better, I want to be on my own. I want to go into a space and close the door. So why am I going to go from this to with you guys until it gets bad enough? Because then it takes it from I don't want to be your person, which means he can never move into with Gainsey to okay, I'll eventually get on my own, but if I'm going to live with people, I might as well with, but we couldn't have it that way because that would, make this, man, I'm shedding everywhere. I am so sorry. Ever since I got COVID, I'm losing like lots of hair.
Yeah, you guys don't know, but this is a fake hairline. It's actually like up here. This is male pattern balding. Yeah, I actually thought that the thing was going to be that he actually moved in with Blue at the end of the book. Like, I thought that was going to be the move, is like he's not going to move in with Gainsey, but he'll move in with like them for a little while.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it just felt a lot. Like, it just felt like more like a thing the author was forcing then.
And it really, because I think she could have gotten to where she wants to get without doing this. But we'll see. I don't know. I'd have to read the other books.
Yeah.
Anyway, they patch up and he's like, well, come on, let's go do a thing. So they end up going home, grabbing Ronan, and then it's back to Blue at Blue's house. She's looking through this journal that her, because her coworker was like, hey, do you know who this journal belongs to? And she saw Gainsey holding it. She doesn't know it's Gainsey. She's looking through Gainsey's again. She doesn't know it's Gainsey's, but she's looking through the notebook and she's like, holy shit, there's a lot here. And she's kind of fascinated and excited by it.
We should explain Kala and
yes.
Persephone.
So Kala and Persephone are two other psychics. There's 3 psychics that live in the house with Mara and her mom. Kala she touches things and can understand the vibes and like what happened and see things associated with the person who owned them. If you didn't read it, but it's kind of similar to the power of the one girl in that book Katie and I read by ourselves.
Oh, Gilded Wolves?
Yeah, in Gilded Wolves.
Yeah, and she's like mean witch, and it's hilarious because she
much.
Delights in being
She's
like mean and rude.
And rude and like sharp-witted, like she's great. And then Persephone has lots of hair and like big doleful eyes and is very quiet and I forgot what her specific, she's ethereal, but I forgot what her specific like power, like what her difference is.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know. Something with numbers. Was that Kala?
That's Kala.
Kala's with numbers.
Persephone, oh no, Neve. Neve is the numbers one.
Neve is the number. Persephone is funny because in a less good book, she would just be like the ethereal one.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, she does something that's sort of like passive aggressive or funny.
The baking the pie was just like once she starts baking, you better not interrupt Persephone. She also walks so quietly nobody can hear her.
And then at one point they're like, you should have made a noise. And she's like, I did walk up the stairs very loudly.
I creaked. I let the she says I let the stairs creak. Like she has the power to avoid that. Then the actual boys come in, and as they walk in, she realizes, oh shit, it's the guys from last night. There's Adam with a giant bruise on his face, and wearing a Coca-Cola shirt. And all the boys, God, look at here, you can have this one. You're welcome.
I feel honored. I'm keeping this part in. Everyone will know about your gift.
It's a good gift. You should be honored. You can clone me now. But anyway, and they're reading. It's basically what happens is they decide, like, initially all the psychics are like, holy shit.
It's too loud.
It's too loud. And they're like, what are you talking about? Nobody's really saying anything. And basically what they say is the energy off of these 4 boys is stupid loud. There's a lot of background feed, and part of it is Blue's there and she heightens everything, so like they're naturally loud and Blue is just making it worse. And they're like, how are we going to do this to make Persephone was clairvoyant. That was it. Thank you,
Houston.
Thank
I don't know
you.
Why I pronounced it at Houston. Look, I need to pronounce it phonetically.
Oh yeah, Kala was psychometry, and then Valerie said, I love when Mara and the girls
that's
just
so funny.
Cocktails. I love
Again, it's a scene that we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's a scene that could be dumb but works because Stiefvater makes it like funny, and there's a lot of small nuances
like Mara
to it.
Doesn't like alcohol.
Yeah,
it's so great. Anyway, that's later. But anyway, and so eventually they decide.
There's a lot of great character interactions too. Kala like keeps bothering Ronan, but you also get the sense she likes how much of a spiky object Ronan is.
Yep. And she decides. So what they decide to do is just do individual card readings. Like you pull a card, they do a reading for you, and they start with Adam. And Adam's is like 2 swords or something. Basically, it's you're stuck between 2 decisions. You don't want to make either. The only way you're going to get out of this is to craft a third option for yourself, which I love. If he would have done that differently and he wouldn't have carved the third option that he did. I don't like the option that he did, but anyway, And then they go to Ronan, and Ronan's like, how do I know you're real? Tell me something real. And Cala's like, your father was killed because of a secret, and you know what it is. And he's like, fuck it, I'm out. And he just storms out, and like Cala touched him. And everybody's like Gainsey's like, how did you know his dad died? He's very sensitive about that. And she's like, I didn't. I just found out, motherfucker.
He asked, what did he want me to do?
He asked for something true, and I gave him something true. Because Ronan's point was everything that they told Adam could have just vague enough and could apply to anyone. But anyway, and it was funny because the choice he was making in his mind was between his father and they specifically said a father or a brother. Mm-hmm. So I like those little sprinklings. But anyway,
and the brother is Ronan.
Yeah. No, the brother is Gainsey.
No, but then the choice he makes, it's actually him between his father and Ronan later on.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh? Literary analysis, guys.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, and then they go to Gainsey, and Gainsey.
I should have put all my books here color coordinated, and then I should have gotten the Christmas lights and put them over here. And this video would have done really well because that's how BookTube works. I didn't think of it though. My bad.
I'm so sorry.
Should I do that, guys? Leave a comment below if you think I should redo. Usually, by the way, I'm recording right over there, and then I'm recording here today because Maria's here and there wasn't enough space for both of us.
I like how your camera doesn't do like the incessant autofocus. Like, it's great being able to be a human without my camera being like.
It's not Turkish. There's a Hispanic camera, so
no beef.
It has a lot of social ennui and angst, but it focuses fine.
And so they pull Gainsey has to pull a card, and at first someone was like, no, Blue, you pull the card. I forgot if it was.
He's like, I don't know how to pull cards. You do it.
He says to Blue, you pick it, and they were like, she was like, I don't know if that's gonna work, and somebody says, it's about intentions. If you want it to work, it'll work. And Blue pulls the something of cups.
Knight.
The Knight of Cups. No.
Yeah.
It's a woman. Anyway, it's something of cups, and it's got a woman's face on it, and the woman on the card looks very much like Blue, and that's also the card that her mother has always told her is her card. And Mara's like, no, pick another one. That's Blue's card. And so he's like,
foreshadowing, guys. Do you think they'll end up together?
And again, this moment would have worked if we hadn't. Anyway, and so then he reshuffled. Then he picks a card, and once again, it is the something of cups. And
Page, Valerie says.
The Page of Cups. Yes. Thank you.
Like, pick it again.
And then again, it's the Page of Cups. And like they're getting, and Gainsey's like, what the fuck is happening? But then he ends up pulling the Knight of something, and it's death. It's the death card. And it's normally like symbolic. But Gainsey, Mara, Cala, or not Gainsey, Blue, Cala, Persephone, and Mara all know that like this motherfucker's gonna die in a year. So they're like, I think you should leave. And then Gainsey's like, I don't actually care about the reading. I came here to ask you guys about ley lines because you guys deal with energy. A ley line is a massive amount of energy. Do you know anything? And Mara's like, leave. I don't know nothing. And then he's like, I know you're lying. Just say you won't help me if you know something. And she's like, I know something and I'm not going to help you. And he's like, fair enough. And then
he's going to give the $20.
Yeah, well, because he said, how much is the reading? And Mara goes, $20. And he looks at her kind of funny. And then Blue realizes, oh, he thinks that's too cheap. So then she goes, $20 each, and he pays $60, and he happily pays $60, and they're all sitting there like, this motherfucker, we could have taken him. So the boys leave.
It is a good scene because it's really funny whenever all the boys are together with the women because there's a lot of personalities like bouncing off each other.
It's so good. And after they leave, Mara's mom, or Blue's mom, Mara, is like, I never want you hanging out with them again. Don't, especially that Gainsey. Stay the fuck away. And Blue's like, you have never given me an order in my life, like ever. And she's like, in her head, she's like, I'm not gonna start listening now. Like you can't start at this age. And so Blue continues to hang out with them. And initially, not a ton of like, she had been waiting for Adam's call, which hadn't come. And then she saw him at the house. And she was like, I wonder if he still wants to call. And then like the next day she gets flowers from Adam, and
a little tiny bouquet,
a tiny little bouquet, because he can't afford a lot. And it says something like, do you still want me to call? Or I hope you still want me to call, or something cute like that. Gansey has heard from his colleague in England, Mallory, that ley lines can be asleep and that you can wake them up with certain rituals that include sacrifice. And immediately you're like, oh, I wonder if that's what happened with Welk and his friend on St. Mark's Eve all those years ago. And you also learn that Gansey's allergic to bees, wasps, anything like that, because there's a scene where there's a wasp and Gansey's just like, my pen's too far away, I guess this is how I like very nonplussed, like, I guess this is how I die. And then Ronan comes in and like smacks it. Ronan has been taking care of his baby bird. It needs to eat every
2 hours.
2 hours. Noah does not like the squawking of the baby bird.
Noah's so funny with what you find out later, because he never takes notes for Ronan when he's late. He's always bothering him about like not being able to sleep. And later on, that's going to become really funny because Ronan's pissed about it. Basically, Blue starts hanging out with the boys and helping them with the projects. Her and Adam are kind of cute. They go on a helicopter by Helen, who is
Gansey's sister.
Because
they want to look at the ley lines from the sky, and Blue has decided she's going to help them. She draws a map to where that church is.
They call them death lines, I think.
The corpse road.
Corpse road, right?
Yeah, her family refers to the ley line as the corpse road because it's the road that all the spirits travel on. And they immediately know that the corpse road is the ley line, but they didn't say anything. And so she's like, I'll show them where the corpse road is. And so while they're in the helicopter, and it's so cute, her and like, there's this point where Adam has to whisper in her ear, and she's like, this is how close you have to be to kiss. Like, this girl is so aware of, and like, you can tell this bitch just want to kiss somebody. Like,
she's never interacted with boys like this.
She's young and she's horny, but for lure. Anyway,
they convince his sister to go down when they see a thing that's important.
they see a raven. Like, the ley line is marked by a giant, like, all these seashells that make a raven in the ground, so you can't see it when you're on the ground but in the air. So they go down, and his sister's like, but I have to go to mom's house, blah blah blah. She complains about stuff. They go down, and while they're down, they follow the shells, and they end up finding this like area with a clearing. And as they go in, they're arguing about time, but there's a clearing with water, and there's a tree with like a giant hole in it, like a cavern. And Adam had gone into it and come out shaking, and he was like, oh my, like, holy shit. And he was very cold. So Blue was like, what is it? And he was like, over there. And so she goes in, and when she goes in, and I do not like this scene, she goes in and she sees a vision of her and Gansey standing in like a cavern, and she's crying, big tears sliding down her face, and he touches her cheek with the back of his hands, and she realizes in this moment that this is a version of her that is in love with Gansey. And he says to her, it's okay, Blue, I'm ready, kiss me now. And she's like, no. And she also realizes Gansey's in love with her in this moment. And it doesn't match with what because like Adam was so shaken, and she's like, is this what Adam saw? And she comes out, and she's talking to Adam, and you realize very quickly they did not see the same thing.
Yeah, Adam saw a vision where like he had done something bad, and Ronan was yelling at him.
Gansey was dead, and Ronan was looking at him going, are you happy? Are you happy now, Adam? Is this what you wanted? And Adam's like, no, I would never do that. That's not something, like, I would never do anything that would hurt Gansey. And I'm like, I don't want to watch the story in which this comes true.
That's the thing, is there was a certain part where I thought there might be kind of like a multiverse type of thing going on, in that like these are possible futures or different versions colliding at different times. And I was like, okay, maybe we can still not get the Gansey romance because I don't want it. But no, I think it's gonna happen.
I'm more upset at the idea of Adam getting to a place where he does something that results
like the end of this book. We'll talk, guys.
I don't like it.
Gansey also has a vision, though. I can't remember what happens.
He just sees the body of Glendower.
Oh, right.
Laying in his coffin with his sword and everything, and he like stands over his helmet and is like, "Oh, hello."
Houston says, I honestly thought that after the helicopter scene, Adam and Gansey's sister was going to be a thing. Yeah, this is a case, I think, again, where she's so good at making these bit parts like really sharp that you're like, okay, this is going to come back. And it isn't. It's just that she's good at writing a character, because there's this whole thing about how Gainsey's mother
collects glassware.
But she gets her a pot for Christmas.
A plate,
but it's not glass.
It's bronze for
and
her
his
birthday.
Mother, like, then is just passive aggressive about it.
And then at one point his dad's like, does your sister...
No.
Is your sister mad at your mom? Is she trying to? Why'd she buy that hideous bronze thing? And she's just, nah.
No, she just didn't realize there was a difference between glass and Tupperware. Not Tupperware, whateverware. Which it's just, again, it's really funny and it's really characterful. And it's, again, one of the things that makes this book really work. But it is a little distracting in certain ways because you think certain things are going to come back. Yep. Unlike in the Scorpio races where, like, every character who pops for a reason, like the innkeeper's wife.
The meat guy's wife.
Yes, the meat guy's wife who was having that affair that I picked up on that Maria didn't. I did not. Like, she was such a character, but she really had a place in the narrative. Even her brother's friend who dies, like, his father really pops as a character, but it has a thematic role of, like, this is the what the races mean.
But you're also not waiting for them to come back because there's 30 pages left in the novel. We're not going to waste it on somebody else. And with this, I went in knowing there was multiple books.
Yeah.
Which
I think it would have been worse if you went in thinking this was a one.
It would have been terrible.
Like, what the fuck?
It would have been terrible. But again, I think there's ways to build the tension better that she did not take. So they see the thing, and then they end up finding... when they walk
time is distorted too. They spent like a half hour in there. It was 7 minutes on the outside, aka fairy mounds in Ireland.
And so they end up, like, his sister flies them back, and they end up just hanging out a lot. And what they learn is that, like, that is obviously a place where, like, the ley lines are, and they want to learn more. And Gainsey, there's just it's almost like a what are those called? A montage of them just hanging out.
I liked, the thing is, it doesn't make any sense for how busy all of their schedules are that they would just become a group in a week. But, like, I like the dynamic of, like, the four boys and then Blue, who, like, she's not a pick-me, but, like, that kind of, like, oh, she's the girl of the group that gets along with everyone. Like, Noah is always patting away her flyaway hairs.
And which will
Noah, come back.
Noah and her are so cute because, like, Noah is it's just weirdly comfortable around her.
Another thing Blue says about Ronan is that, like, she dislikes how much she wants him to like her because he dislikes everyone.
Yeah, so it means something if he likes you.
Which is such, like, a very human thing. I've talked before about, like, when authors put words to a feeling you've had but you've never really thought of, and, like, this is such a small humanizing touch that it makes the characters feel more real. And Stiefvater is just really good at doing that.
So it is a couple of weeks. Really quick, just because Angry Otter said I thought it was 6 weeks or so, and I think it is specifically 3 weeks. So there's a point where Mara was like, "What were you doing this week and last week and the week before that?" And so I'm pretty sure it's 3 weeks. But anyway, they end up hanging out a lot, and it's after school, and they never, like, go to her house. She meets them somewhere, and so that her mom doesn't know about it, and they don't call. So she ends up getting to know them. Her and Adam are doing, like, light flirting. At one point they're, like, hand holding. But anyway, they decide very cute. They decide to go back to the woods where that little water was. The other thing I should explain about the water is when they get there's, like, a tiny little well in this clearing, and Gainsey's looking at it, and there's fish, and he's like, I think those fish are there because I thought there would be fish here. And she's like, nah, that's not how things work. And then he's like, yeah, what color were they at first? And they were, like, black and gray at first. And he's like, I just thought maybe, like, river trout would make, or lake trout would make more sense. So they end up going back to the place. They drive in the Camaro. And when they get there, they get to the place, and they take note of the time because they realize time is going to be weird in there. And when they start walking, they realize this doesn't look the same. And then Blue's like, hey guys, did you see the color of the trees? And it's winter trees. Like, it is legit winter. And then they end up fall. It's fall in this one area. And then they end up walking in a different direction, and it's winter, and they see a rock. And on the rock there is writing. And they're like, that's really weird. And they're like, wait, is that Latin? And they're looking at it, and Gainsey and Ronan are the best at Latin. But
Ronan's much better.
Ronan's much better. And he's like, and they're like, what does it say, Ronan? And he's like, it's a joke. And then Adam is looking at it, and he's like, there's something about the way it's written the shape of the words that is off-putting. And then Ronan goes, oh God, because they said, why would there be a joke here? And he goes, it's there so I would recognize it if I didn't recognize my own handwriting. And then Adam realizes the reason he thought the words looked weird was because he recognizes Ronan's handwriting, and the paint, the whatever it was written in, is so old it has faded, and like it is ancient. There's parts where it's black, there's parts where it's like a plum purple, and it says, there's a joke, and then it says the trees speak Latin. And it has like a direction-y thing. And so they start walking into this one area, and they hear like there's all these trees, and it's like winter. And they hear, so they've walked from autumn straight to winter. And the trees are rustling. And so then they stand there, and then they're like, Adam, Ronan, talk to the trees. And he's like, this is dumb. What am I going to say? And she's like, Blue's like, maybe say hello. And so they say hello, and then they respond, and the trees recognize Ronan and Blue. And they're like, we're glad you're back, guys. And then they're like, oh shit, what is happening? And basically the trees tell them, like, there's something you should go look at. Go this way, see this thing, and then you'll be able to get out, because they're trying to figure out, because they're freezing. They're in shorts.
And it's winter.
And it's winter now. So they end up walking, and they walk straight from winter into a summer glade. And in the middle of this area is a red Mustang that is dirty, covered in pollen. Like, it's been here a long time.
No, this happens later.
Nope, this is the scene.
Is?
Yep. Because this is where Noah throws up.
Oh, you're right. Okay, no, I'm thinking of another scene.
I know what scene you're thinking of.
Yeah,
that's later. Anyway, and they're looking at this Mustang, and they're like, what is this doing here? Why would we need to see this? Noah is retching in the background. And it's funny because Gansey doesn't like when you say vomiting.
Yeah. And then Ronan doesn't seem to recognize what it is until they say retching. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then he goes to help out.
And he goes to help out because he's like, this is my territory. I do this all the time as an alcoholic 18-year-old.
High schooler.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it would work better if they were in college. Like, be 21 at least if you're going to be an alcoholic, you know? Anyway, and they're looking at it, and they're like, that's weird. And then they go home. And then this is where I think she goes home, and her mom's like, what have you been up to for the past few weeks?
No. We got to set the scene.
Yes. So she walks in, and she's like trying to do stuff. And then she hear her mom going, Blue, in this like fake sing-song voice. And she walks in, and it's like Calla, her mom, Persephone, and I think Neve's there, and they're all drinking like cocktails. And her mom goes to take a sip, like very like angrily going to take a sip, but it tastes like shit. She's like, Jesus, Calla, how much liquor did you put in this? And basically she's summoned Blue so she can berate her about
hanging out with the boys and not listening to her and disregard it. And she's like, listen, I know I've never told you not to do stuff. And so she's like, so I don't really know what to do, how to punish you, because we've never been in this position before. And she's like, well, if you didn't tell me not to do it, then I wouldn't have disobeyed you. That's on you. And basically they walk away from it where, oh God. So Blue has been noticing weird stuff with her Aunt Neve. One of which is at one point she walks in the backyard on her Aunt Neve scrying. But while she's scrying, it's hella creepy. And her aunt is talking with a voice that isn't hers. It's this dark, possessed devil voice.
Yeah, like it's a demon. She possessed by a demon. And the demon voice is like, who's there? I know you're there. Come out. And Blue's like, it's me, Aunt Neve. And then it's like, hello. And then she's like, what the fuck? So then she ends up kicking something over to like summon her aunt out of it. And she's like, what were you doing? And she was like, just scrying. And she'd scried before, and she was like, no, that was different. So now Blue is just suspicious because she knows that was something demonic. So that something was fucked up. Her aunt is going in weird places. So she ends up talking to Calla about it, and she's like, yo, Calla, I need you to help me. And she's like, why is Neve here? And she's like, I don't know if what your mom told us is the truth. And Blue's like, damn. Mom hiding shit. We gotta
we gotta figure out what's going on when they're out of the house.
And Cal is like, if you let me poke around into a room and I touch stuff, we might be able to figure something out, but I'm gonna need an hour. We'll figure out when this will work. And so
that plot line hung for a while. Like, I was kind of like, did she forget that was gonna happen?
And then Calla was like, don't forget our movie night.
And they're like, what movie are you watching? And it was like The Dwarf Also Starts Small or something. Something like, she's like, in the original German. And then later Persephone is like, nobody watches that shitty movie. We knew you were lying.
But yeah, so she has this that conversation where Mora's like, don't do stuff. But she continues hanging out with the boys.
No. She goes and hangs out with Gansey alone, which feels weird.
Yes, which feels weird because her and Adam are still like doing a thing. So she goes to hang out with Gansey, and she ends up telling him because she takes him to the old church, the one where she saw his spirit at before. And she tells him that she can't kiss anybody because if she kisses her true love, he'll die. And he was like, oh, so it's like that with Adam. And she was like, I don't know what it's like with Adam. But she's still like, one of the things is even after this point, she's still genuinely into Adam. Like,
at no point in the book is she genuinely into Gansey, which I did like.
I do like, but it would work better if we didn't know already that like she'd gone fall. Like if it wasn't so.
I also just don't like her and Gansey together. Her and Adam make such a cute couple. He's so much better for her.
He is. If he didn't get
character
assassinated. But anyway, so they go to this church, and while they're exploring there, they end up stumbling on a body. And it's just skeleton, some threads, a watch, and they end up finding in its pocket its ID, and it's Noah. And you're like, oh shit, he was right when he said he'd been dead for 7 years. That was him. So they call the police. The police say, like, yes, this kid has been missing for 7 years, blah, blah, blah. And they end up kind of moving because it's the police, they move, like, his remains. And so then they go back to the house, and they're telling Ronan and Adam, and Ronan's like, and they're calling for Noah and being like, where are you? And, like, Noah does this thing where a lot of the times you think he's not there, and then a door opens and Noah's there. But it's, like, opens behind you. And they're like searching for him, and then like they open one thing, they turn, and then they look back, and Noah's there, and he's like, I told you guys, I told you. And he's having a rough time because what has happened is his remains were laying on a ley line, which kept him still in the world as this presence.
We also find out at one point that Gansey had gotten stung by a bunch of wasps. And thought like, oh, I'm gonna die. This is it.
He could die from one sting. Even an EpiPen wouldn't save him from the amount of stings he was getting from all of them.
But basically, he's like, he's telling Blue this earlier. He's like, and I died, and I heard a voice saying,
something Glendower here.
Basically, when Noah died, the life energy transferred from him.
Yes, somebody
Gansey.
who shouldn't have been dying was dying on a ley line. So you who should be dying will not die. Like a balancing of energy. But they specifically mentioned Glendower in this thing. And that is what has started his obsession with Glendower and finding the ley line. Because imagine thinking, oh, I'm dying. And then a voice being like, hold it. You're not gonna, because another person is dying on a ley line. So you're supposed to die, but we're not gonna, And then, I'd be obsessed too.
Well, there's also a certain amount to which it's explained that the reason that Gansey wants to find the ley line is he feels like he needs to make his life worth it in terms of like being rich. What do you do with all of that? And in this case, it's not brought up, but you can kind of infer that like, oh, he feels like he owes this other person his life. Like his life was given to him. So he needs to do something with that. And he needs to
make it worth it. And so you don't in this moment discover that Noah was the one that was like the trade because they haven't exactly figured out that he died. Like there's a point where Blue has to go talk to him. But Noah ends up disappearing. And from this point on, Noah is having a really hard time appearing corporeally. And he is like, they realize, oh, we're haunted, but this time it feels like we're haunted. Where like Noah, he can like slam doors, he can knock things off tables, but he has a really hard time. Like you maybe hear his voice, but you don't see him, except when Blue's around, because if he touches Blue, he can be a little bit more solid and present. And that is the point when Blue finally comes over and talks to him and says like, how long? And he was like, yeah, it was 7 years ago. And then they realize that's when Adam's like, that was around the same time that Gansey died. And Ronan's like, who killed you, my guy? And he was like, oh, you guys already know. Fast forward, the present that Helen, Gainsey's sister, bought for Gainsey's mom had to have a birthday celebration attached. That's where Gainsey is right now. He is doing that, and on his drive back in his beat up, like, expensive ass piece of shit Camaro, he gets kind of stalled on the side of the road. And again, in this moment, they are like, the conversation between Blue, Ronan, Adam, and Noah is happening. He gets pulled over, and so you in your head are like, oh, it's Welk. Welk killed him. And then Gainsey gets stopped on the side of the road, and who should appear but Welk, who's like, give me your journal, motherfucker. I got a gun. Like, no preamble, no, oh, hey, like, nothing. Welk just gets to business. He holds up Gainsey. Gainsey ends up punching him and breaking his thumb. And he hides under his car, knocks the gun away from him, but Welk runs off with his journal, which has the coordinates written for Cadeswater, which is the place where the car was, and like it's the heart of the ley line, basically.
Oh yeah, the thing is that, like, if you get control of the ley line or you reawaken it, you get like. I thought they mentioned that earlier.
No. It happens. Actually, it happens right around the scene, because Mallory calls. Mallory called while Blue was at Monmouth and basically said Mallory's the old British dude, or the guy from the UK. I think he's Welsh, but anyway, or Scottish. He might be Scottish.
I thought he was French, so
he was not in any realm at that. But he calls and basically is like, "Oh, we did the ritual. My friend, his skin jumped off of him. You know, maybe don't do that." And Blue's like, well, tell me more. And basically, they put stones up, and his friend was sitting in the middle of the stone, like standing in the middle of the stones, and happened to say something about like jumping out of his skin. And then his skin literally flies off of him. And so he's like, yeah, maybe don't do that. And then that's when she has the conversation with Noah and Ronan and Adam. But then she goes home while Gainsey's still being like dealing with all of that. Gainsey's car. So Gainsey and Welk have that altercation. He gets in his car. He drives back to Monmouth. Blue is at her house now, talking. Her aunt, her mom and her aunt and Calla and Persephone are having a conversation, basically going into, I think this is where they're investigating. Yeah. They're investigating her aunt's room. This is the night they're going to pretend. So she, during the day, went to hang out with the boys, and now it's nighttime. Her and Calla are going to investigate Aunt Neve's room while Aunt Neve and Mora are out of the house. And Persephone comes up and goes, like, by the way, your mom says you have an hour. They'll be back at 12, so, be done by that. And Blue's like, she knew? And then that's the moment when Persephone's like, nobody believed you were going to watch the Joe and Goblin movie.
But they all want to know what's going up with me, because it's kind of weird.
Yeah, because so they go in her room. They discover, like, she wears this black mask sometimes and stands in front of these 4 mirrors, or these 2 mirrors. But also, they end up finding her day planner, where it says that somebody called her and asked her to come investigate the ley lines in Henrietta, Virginia, where they live. And she said no, but then she decided to investigate them herself, but also said that she was going to help Mora find Blue's dad, because Blue doesn't know who her dad is. Her mother never talks about it, and evidently is trying to find it. And so it is in this moment that Cal is like, yeah, your dad was this guy. He blew in, got your mom pregnant, and then fucking disappeared. And then she's like, what was his name? And they're like, your mom called him Puppy, Butternut, and like all these
and then afterwards for the whole book, she keeps
calling him Butternut.
And her mom is like, please stop.
And she was like, maybe if you had told me, I would have used something else. But anyway, so then her mom and Neve come home. And the 2 things happen in this conversation. Number 1, Persephone comes up and says, good news, or 2 things. Your Raven boys are about to be here, and your one guy has broken his thumb. And also, Neve and your mom are here, as Neve walks up the stairs. And basically, they confront her about why she came. And she said, listen, I did decide to come to help you do this stuff, but I also wanted to investigate this. And her mom is like, man, I should have been telling you things. But when they have the conversation with the boys and they explain that Welk, because they read the name of the guy, Calla read the name of the guy who asked Neve for help, and it was Barrington Welk, which is the guy that just shot up old Gainsey. So the boys come, they're like, this has just happened. They realize, oh, this Welk guy tried to shoot you, asked Neve for help. This motherfucker is dangerous. And they basically say, they all, like a couple of them now know that the ley line is going to wake up in the next few days. And they're like, oh, we should wake it up before Welk wakes it up, because whoever wakes up the ley line will have control over it. And they realize now that Welk is also trying to find Glendower. I should specify that Welk had been really obsessed with finding the ley lines when he was at Allingby with Noah. Noah and him were best friends. They a lot of the similar things, except he didn't know who Glendower was, and he had no interest in him. They were just looking for the ley lines. And what happened is, the night his family was found to have gone bankrupt was the night that he and Noah decided to try go do the ritual to wake up the ley line, which ended in Noah's death. Now, Noah claims that he had been really upset something bad had happened, and that if it hadn't been for that, Welk wouldn't have done this. And they're all like, I don't know if that guy was actually your friend, bro. Like, that seems kind of shady.
Welk is a well-sketched character in that you do feel like he's kind of a loser. Like, he really thinks he's tragic, but he's kind of a loser.
He's just a loser.
And towards the end of the book, he finally lets himself realize like how much he misses Noah and how much he really regrets doing that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was like nicely humanizing, even as he doesn't become a better person from it.
Anyway, Blue ends up telling Gainsey what Mallory said, which is, like, you shouldn't wake up the ley lines. And he's like, okay, then we're not going to do that. We're just absolutely not going to do that. I'm not having anyone jumping out of their skin. But Adam's like, no, we have to. We can't. Because Adam's reason for wanting to find Glendower and the whole thing is he wants the wish. He wants the wish. He wants enough money to be able to do the things he needs. Gainsey isn't in it for the wish. Again, his needs are met. He just wants the thrill of the discovery. But Adam wants it. He is poor. He is stuck in a house. He doesn't want to have to take Gainsey up on his offer for help, but he does want to get out of it. So for him, finding Glendower is a little bit more personal, and I wouldn't say personal, but a little more like currently necessity.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. This is where we have to talk about the assassination of Adam's character, because it doesn't really make sense that up until this point that he would have this strong a reaction to go against what Gainsey is saying and what makes sense, to then just grab this like play for power. Yes. Because the whole thing is, earlier there was a scene where like his father hit him, and then there was a later scene where his father hit him again, but Ronan was around, so Ronan got in a fight.
I was getting to that, yeah.
And the thing is that like the police showed up, and Adam's mother had always been like, "Don't talk to the police, we'll handle it." And like obviously
that wasn't it kind of your fault anyway?
Yeah, and but the thing is, like, if he didn't say anything, Ronan would go to jail and then get kicked out of the school. So he says something.
And Gainsey had literally just
spent $30,000
to keep Ronan.
And in 2012 money too, so that's even more. It was very painful to hear about. And so he's also feeling like he can never go home. He'll never see his mother, or his mother will never speak to him again. And like up until this point, it makes sense. But then he has this dumb argument with Gainsey about like, okay, you win. Like, I'm going to have to come live with you now.
You can have all of your things in one place now.
Yeah. And it just felt like a little bit much.
And the thing is, because like he did have other options. I mean, him and Ronan very easily found him the place to live in that one church place.
Yeah.
Like it feels like an artificial choice, because it should have been less about Gainsey than him choosing to save Ronan and then being like, okay, I'll stay with you for a little bit, and then I need to figure out what I'm going to do for myself. But it's phrased, it's positioned in this way, and this might be where like having them be teenagers works, because it's phrased in that kind of all or nothing way, where in the moment teenagers can sometimes not see out of the like hole they're in, but then if they stand, they're like, oh, it comes to my knee, Jesus. Like, that was dramatic. Like in your 20s, you look back on some of the things that upset you and you're like, wow.
You should have so much more context for the world and so many less hormones.
Exactly. And so it works a little bit for that, but
it needed to be built up more. And Adam is such a normally chill character that it just doesn't make sense that he would be like this upset enough to go off and like essentially do the villainous, like I need to get the power kind of thing.
It's what it feels like is that he wants this thing to happen, but when he finds out, so when they're like, oh, somebody would have to get hurt in this ritual, we won't do that, we'll do something else, it's going to be working too slowly, because he has the first moment of no, we should do it anyway before all this stuff goes down with his dad. So his first moment of being like, no, we should do it anyway, and Gainsey being like, nah, we're not going to do it, we're just going to leave it, happens before all the shit goes down with his dad. And then all the shit goes down with his dad, he goes back to the house. I think this is how it happened. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He goes to like Gainsey goes to pick him up from the hospital, and Adam is not doing great. He's lost the hearing in his left ear because when his dad hit him, and then he ended up falling and hitting his ear on a staircase, and so he's not doing great mentally, and he's very much in his field. So again, they have that dumb argument about like where Gainsey's like, no, this is not how I wanted it to happen. Like, I wanted you walking triumphantly out of your father's house, not beaten up. But they're having that trouble where like they're defaulting to two different languages again, where like Adam is speaking from like where he is, and Gainsey cannot help but talk from that like high place of which he's
with
been
his
raised
high
from.
vocabulary.
And so they're butting heads. And when they get back to Monmouth, Adam has this moment of being like, if somebody has to, like, I don't want anyone to have to sacrifice themselves. I don't want anyone else to get hurt, but I'll do it. Like, I will take that. And it's sold sacrificially, but also as almost like a power grab. Like, it's more like, this has to happen. I don't want Gainsey to, because he says, like, I wouldn't want to sacrifice Gainsey. I don't want any of that to happen, but it needs to happen before Welk does it. Because again, for him, it's, he wants whatever gift, Glendower is going to give. And so then he decides by himself, he is going to go deal with this, and handle it. And part of it is self-sacrificial. Like, I'm going to do this to protect them, but it is what needs to be done. Because he's like, the psychics told us that it's going to happen in a couple of days. So if we don't do it, someone's going to do it. And Gainsey's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And Welk at this point is all like, oh, I want power. And actually, while this all has been happening, Welk has been on the run because he thinks now that Noah's been found, like, they're going to catch him. And that's why he went after Gainsey. And now, like, he didn't kill Gainsey because he's just not very competent.
Yeah.
And then he's by a payphone and it keeps ringing. And it ends up being Neve because Neve is good with numbers. And there's a great scene where the next time it shows up is that Neve is in the car, and he hated that she was in the car because she was eating hummus.
Very garlicky
hummus. And she had tied him up and put him in the back. Which is really funny.
It's hysterical because the first part of the scene, you think they're in the car together, just chill. Because he was like, it smells like garlic. She's getting crumbs all over my driver's seat. And then it's like, and she's tied up in the back seat. And you're like, oh, that's flipping hysterical.
Because, like, the thing about Welk is he is a rich kid. Like, no matter how much money he has, he is a rich kid.
And it's what you realize is Neve has now decided she's going her own way. She has an opportunity to get the power of the ley line and be the one who awakens it, and she's going to take it. And she's decided Welk is going to be the bastard that she sacrificed.
It's not enough to be a psychic with a TV show. She wants more power.
She wants more fame and more power. And
Valerie says, God, I love all the little character moments like that. Maggie, you're killing me. That's the thing, is she really is like that. Her writing is like that. It's just funny in small ways.
And then Valerie also has a good comment. Adam feels like a real teenager in that sense of like the inability to see
what we were talking about earlier.
The ditch that he's in.
The thing about it is, intellectually, it makes sense. But I never quite, in terms of him being a teenager making these decisions, but it never really felt that way to me.
It feels too much like him versus Gainsey in the moment.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have been. It should not have been at all. They are too close, because there's this point where like Noah's like, but he was my friend. And Adam's like, but was he? And I'm like, Adam, but were you? Like Neve takes Welk to the Cadeswater. Adam is taking the Camaro to go to Cadeswater. Gainsey wakes up, realizes what has happened, drives to Blue's house. They grab Blue. They realize what's going on. Everybody is like now rushing towards Cadeswater. When Adam gets there, he really, like, he catches them in the middle of the ritual, but at this point, Welk had gotten out of the bonds that Neve had tied him up in because she didn't tie them tight enough, and he whacked her over the head, so she's passed out. And so now he is going to try sacrifice her. And then Adam, he sees Adam there, and there's a funny moment where like he has Neve tied up to do the sacrifice, and she's like, "It won't work. I'm not a sacrifice for you. You don't know me." And he's like, "But you don't know me." And she's like, "My sacrifice was my innocence. I've never killed someone before. You have, motherfucker. So it wouldn't mean anything." And so she set up a pentagram, and all of her stuff is ready. And so basically how the others, like in England, they set up the 7 stones in a circle, and then somebody was standing in the middle, whatever's in the middle is the sacrifice. And there's this point where like Gainsey gets there and he's like, "Mr. Welk, stop, we've called the police." And Blue's like, "What's happening?" And it basically what happens is there's a kerfuffle. Adam ends up in the middle of the circle and he goes, "I will sacrifice myself." I would have been okay with this if him and Gainsey had not fought beforehand. Yeah. If it had felt like if there had been a moment where Gainsey had nearly stepped in and he was like, "No, buddy, I got this." Yeah. Yeah. That I would have liked. I do not like how him going there and like how the decision to do the ritual had been him versus Gainsey. I don't like the fight with him versus, because it makes what had been a really wholesome, cute friendship feel very
and
weak.
It feels like weirdly like trying to make Adam like a bad guy, or like, set him up that way to be later, and I was like, this just doesn't
it doesn't at all, and I don't like it. And I think it would have been fine to have Adam do this, but it needed to be framed differently, like they hadn't just been arguing. Or
I think she needed a certain amount of drama to be happening at this point in the book, like in like character strife, and so I don't know if that's why she did it, but it feels kind of like she did that to introduce some like conflict, because otherwise it's just the gang versus Welk.
Like, I think it would have worked better if like Blue had found out that her aunt was going to do this, like that her aunt had gone rogue. She called the boys to be like, "Hey, my aunt's gone rogue. We've got to stop her. I don't know what she's doing. She's been messing with some really dark shit. However she wakes up the ley line will probably not be good for anyone." So she runs off first.
Oh, you're right.
And then the boys have to go to like do this, but also to save her and protect her. And that's how they all end up there. Because currently the impetus,
you're right.
The impetus to get them to Cadeswater that night is Adam going ahead of them. But you could have easily done it because Blue realized Neve had gone rogue. And
and then you still have most of the same series of events. Because what happens is Adam goes into the circle and like, but he doesn't. I thought he was gonna have like died.
I thought he was not going to be able to leave Cadeswater.
Yeah, I thought something like that.
What is the sacrifice?
I didn't understand that. Like, I thought like it was like, oh, he is now one with the ley line or something.
There is a sense that he has now become different. Like when he's talking to them, the way he thinks, and because like there's this point where he like lets a bunch of orange creatures trample Welk to death. Which was unnecessary because at that point Welk was no longer a threat to anyone, and like Welk goes to shoot him and he doesn't miss, and yet
he doesn't get shot.
Adam doesn't get shot at the same time. And so it's really weird because at the end of the book, Adam can just walk around and do things. And I thought the sacrifice, again, if you had framed it in a way where like he had done it to protect Gainsey or someone else, maybe he did it to protect Blue. Whatever the case is, he chooses to sacrifice himself instead of them. And then he got trapped there. And their only way to go see him was to visit. And then he is going in and out of time. So they're seeing him at different points. Yeah. And then that is a really good way to have a character who is really...
The thing about the falling action in this book that's a little weird is that they never have a conversation with Adam to like deal with all of the emotional. I actually almost thought like he had gotten stuck there and I hadn't known because he just isn't in it really. He doesn't talk in the falling action really.
He does a little, like he's there, but it's really weird. And there's a sense that he has become like a different person now. Like something has fundamentally changed about him because Blue has the same thought and Gainsey has the same thought. But it's
weird. It's like I guess she was waiting till the next book to deal with the fallout, but like I would have liked some of that in this book.
Yes.
Because again, it's one of the things that contributes to this feeling like the first part of a series instead of a book.
They go to Noah's funeral, where they bury Noah's remains, and then they go back later that night and they dig it up and they redo the mound and they put his bones in the little graveyard that is on the ley line, because again, with him not on a ley line, he struggles to be corporeal. And the minute they put him back, he like pops back up in the church and he's like, this place is creepy. Can we go home now? And that's basically how the book ends.
And there's also just a funny part. I can't remember where Ronan's like, no wonder you never took notes from me. You were never in class, and yet you always bothered me about doing it.
Yeah. The plots that are still hanging are Adam's vision of him betraying, like just doing something that ends up in Gainsey's death. Blue seeing Gainsey and her romantically. There's also, she has a flashback to the two of them in the Camaro. She's driving and he comes towards her and he's like, I just want to pretend like I could. And it's like he could kiss her. And so they're gonna end up in love.
Not that puppy.
Not you, it's okay. And then also finding Glendower. So there's all of these things that are setting up the next book. And again, I think it would have worked way better if the setup had been she kisses Adam. And so maybe someone sees Glendower, but she kisses Adam. He doesn't die. He doesn't know that he's supposed to die because she never tells him. And then her and Gainsey are like, I guess that's not my true love.
I think the other thing is that like the Noah stuff in this book, it doesn't really go anywhere. Like I like but it's what is it adding like thematically to the story, or even really the plot that he's come back now, or like what was the point of all that? And I think that's one of the issues, is that the Scorpio Races was so thematically tight and plot tight that like every element added to all of it, that in this one it's like, okay, but what was the point of having a ghost be one of your like bro friends, like especially now that he's back, what is he gonna do? And like thematically, what is this book about? And the answer is nothing really. Like it's sort of about power and privilege and stuff. One of the books I compared it to a lot in my head was just in general is like a Diana Wynne Jones book, where like this actually feels very much like a book she would write, except they would all be siblings or something. Because she's obsessed with family. But it's like kind of low stakes, creepy, weird at times, but also like the kids at the end have learned something. Dark Lady Durkalum is actually like one of her more high stake books. Almost all her other books are pretty low stakes, and like a kind of a homey feeling. And that also makes me think that this book is almost better for younger YA than like ACOTAR YA, in that like if you read this when you're like 13 or 14, I could see this being a really good book where you're in with the emotions. You don't need it to wrap up the plot. You're just like, oh, this was fun, this was good.
And also, if you want a series, I'm sure this will be fine. But I like even with series, I like each books to feel like they've explored a thing and closed it, and then just leave a hook for the next one. And this one, just because of how she handled some of the things, felt too much. Because again, I think you could have had a tight, concise, low stakes stories just with the Noah is dead, finding the ley line, waking it up, and the Welk issue. Like I think that, and then leaving Neve disappearing, because Neve disappears, and what is up with her and the shit she was doing, and then the like kiss with Adam not killing him. That would have been a really nice like hook for the next book, to be like, oh, now I want to read it, but like wrapping up a whole story. And I think that's part of the problem, because it does feel like, you know, when TV shows split a season and there's part 1 and part 2, and there is a like almost like a finale, and then they have the rest of the season. It feels a little bit like that, instead of feeling like a complete beginning to end story.
But with loose ends that could be tied up.
Because Gainsey's death just hangs over the whole book, it really takes the stakes of this book and makes them feel too low for what we've built up.
Yeah, that's true. Or if she had realized at the end that the boy she's going to kiss, like she had gotten like a vision of it at the end, then you're like, oh, interesting. Because yeah, you're right. Him maybe dying if they fall in love sets up really high stakes that don't come to fruition.
Yeah, and in the beginning, she sees him during a time where whoever you see during this point will die in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, I think without the knowing that it was her true love, and without the visions, I think it could have still worked, where like Gainsey dying, I mean, it could be from a bee sting, you know, like you don't know, but it feels so faded, and I don't like the idea of faded lovers. Like it's not a thing I'm here for.
Wait, you're saying you didn't like it when Rysand realized that Farah was his mate beforehand, and like
watching my facial expressions, I still haven't finished that video. But watching my facial expressions in that video is just
Valerie says Blue and Gansey start calling each other mate once they find out they're faded.
Valerie, shut your mouth.
God, I hope not.
No.
But yeah, overall, those were my feelings on the book. I think it's a good book. I think if you're younger YA, it's good. I don't think it's like a book in its own right.
It's not Scorpio Races.
It's not. Scorpio Races is just gorgeous. I will say that like I'm not actually interested in reading the rest of the book.
I am.
I'm not curious about what happens.
I am. Mainly just because I enjoyed there's a vibe that Stiefvater creates that I like. It's like a happy place. You know how Katie was describing Akatar and Akamath for her? This for me is much more like
the vibe you like to live in.
Yeah.
I get that.
That it feels like a it's not like the greatest thing, but it is like a yummy slice of pound cake. Like it might be a slice of pound cake from Starbucks.
That's fancy for me, guys.
Yeah.
That's like the fanciest.
Again, it's not McDonald's by any stretch of the imagination, but like my mom's lemon pound cake is better than Starbucks is.
True.
But it's still like it hits the spot for me. Like I'd go back for it. And so like, yeah, I'm probably in between other books, though I literally finished that one and started back up on Authority.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There's a book I kind of want to read, like just for my own self, and I'm like, I don't know when I'm gonna have time to do this because we can't make a video about it. All right, Thank you for joining us, guys. This was a fun one, and if you would like to support independent journalism, join our Patreon. You get to also not just support independent journalism, but be part of these live streams, which we think is pretty cool. So my mom needs to go show Maria all of her plants, which will take several hours. So
and then I need to go back and drive 45 minutes back from where I came from, and then drive back the same way to go get my work laptop that I left at my sister's house, and I took hers instead.
All right, we'll see you all later.
Bye.